Hassan Al Banna is often called the father of modern political Islam. But was he a reformer or the architect of an extremist ideology? This critical analysis moves beyond biography to dissect the core tenets of Al Banna's thought. His radical concept of Jahiliyya, his blueprint for an Islamic totalitarian state, his synthesis of Salafism and anti-Western revolution, and his ultimate rejection of pluralistic Islam. We trace how his ideas, intended to revive Muslim power, became the foundational text for movements from the Taliban to Al-Qaeda, shaping a century of religious political extremism. The 20th century's reimagining of political Islam found its most effective engineer not in a palace or a mosque, but in a classroom. Hassan Al Banna, the Egyptian schoolteacher who founded the Muslim Brotherhood in 1928, didn't just seek to revive faith, he sought to weaponize it. His revolutionary synthesis argued that Islam was a totalitarian political system, that modern society was a new Jahiliyya of ignorance requiring purification, and that true Muslims must engage in a comprehensive takeover of the state and the society. While often framed as a reformist, Al Banna's ideology was fundamentally rejectionist of Western modernity, of pluralistic Islamic tradition, and ultimately of coexistence with any system not under his vision of God's sovereignty. This is not merely a story of a movement's birth. It is an autopsy of an ideology that would fuel decades of extremism, from the Taliban's emirate to the jihadist violence of Al-Qaeda. Al Banna's worldview was forged in the crisis of the 1920s. The collapse of the Ottoman Caliphate in 1924 was for him not just a political loss but a theological catastrophe, the removal of God's ordained governance. In British-occupied Cairo, he witnessed Western cultural incursion not as modernity, but as a moral pandemic. This dual trauma, political submission, and cultural decay led him to a stark conclusion. The problem was not just foreign imperialism, but Muslims themselves who had strayed. He absorbed the puritanical, literalist strain of the Salafiyya movement, but radicalized it. Figures like Muhammad Abdu had used reform to reconcile Islam with the modern world. Al Banna used it to declare war on the modern world. His core belief crystallized early, that compromise was corruption. True Islam had to be total, governing every law, every social interaction, every thought. Al Banna's ideology rests on three radical pillars that break from mainstream Islamic political thought. First, the totalitarian state. His famous dictum that Islam is faith and worship, homeland and nationality, religion and state, spirituality and action, wasn't just a poetic ideal. It was a political blueprint. His 50-point program sent to King Farouk is a chilling document. It demands a one-party state under the Sharia, the abolition of all political parties he deemed divisive, surveillance of citizens and the officials, state-enforced gender segregation, and the censorship of all art, music, and literature deemed immoral. This is not a call for religious revival. It is a blueprint for a theocratic police state. Second, the concept of modern Jahiliyya. Traditionally, Jahiliyya referred to the pre-Islamic age of ignorance. Al Banna radically reapplied it to contemporary Muslim societies. In his view, any nation not governed explicitly by his interpretation of Sharia, even if its people were nominally Muslim, was living in a new pervasive Jahiliyya. This wasn't just a criticism, it was a doctrine of disownment. It declared Egypt's government, its legal system, and its social customs illegitimate and pagan. This idea, later amplified by his disciple Sayyid Qutb, became the theological justification for a violent revolution against Muslim majority states, a core tenet of Al-Qaeda and ISIS. Third, synthesis with Wahhabism and rejection of tradition. While not a Wahhabi himself, Al Banna explicitly praised the Saudi project for its puritanical zeal, ignoring its destruction of Islamic historical sites and its sectarian violence. He embraced its rejectionist spirit, viewing the vast diversity of Islamic jurisprudence, Sufi mysticism, and local traditions as corruptions. His vision was a homogenized politicized Islam, stripped of historical complexity and rigidly focused on power. Al Banna was a master organizer. He understood that ideology needs machinery. The Brotherhood was built like a modern revolutionary party combined with a sect. Its core unit was the Usra, family, a small secretive cell for ideological indoctrination and mutual surveillance, directly evolving from his teenage habit of sending anonymous moralizing letters. But his genius was in building a parallel state. The Brotherhood provided what the Egyptian government did not: schools, hospitals, charities, and businesses. This social welfare was not pure altruism. It was a tool for recruitment, loyalty, and demonstrating the success of their model. It created a state within a state, fostering a primary allegiance to the Brotherhood over the nation. And this model of combining social services with radical indoctrination became the template for Hamas in Palestine and was mirrored in the early community work of the Taliban. His strategy was explicitly gradualist, from the individual to the family, to the society, to the government, and to the Islamic State. This patient, bottom-up takeover disguised a relentless pursuit of total control. To assess Al Banna fairly is to trace the logical endpoints of his ideas. First, from political Islam to jihadism. While Al Banna initially focused on grassroots work, he established a secret special apparatus for violence and assassination. This created an organizational precedent for armed wings. More importantly, his ideology provided the intellectual infrastructure. His rejection of the state as Jahili, his call for a total Islamic system, and his fusion of religion and politics created a mindset where political opposition becomes theological heresy and seizing power becomes a religious duty. This is the bridge from the Brotherhood to the revolutionary violence of Egyptian Islamic Jihad, which produced Ayman al-Zawahiri of Al-Qaeda and the totalitarian project of the Taliban. Secondly, a blueprint for Islamic authoritarianism. His vision had no room for democracy, pluralism, or minority rights. The Islamic State he imagined was majoritarian, repressive, and sought to erase the line between public and private life. It is the direct ideological forebear of the Islamic State's Caliphate project and the Taliban's emirate. Thirdly, the global legacy. The transmission was direct. Sayyid Qutb, the Brotherhood's chief radical theorist, took Al Banna's Jahiliyya concept to its violent conclusion. Maududi in Pakistan systematized the ideology, influencing the Pakistani state and its militant proxies. The Brotherhood's network exported this ideology worldwide, providing the shared ideological language for desperate extremist groups. Hassan Al Banna died in 1949, assassinated by the state he sought to overthrow. But his ideology achieved a viral, enduring life. He successfully articulated a powerful, reactive identity for Muslims humiliated by colonialism, but he channeled that energy into a project of religious authoritarianism. He wasn't just a reformer reacting to his time, he was an architect of a modern political extremism that frames all struggle in absolute civilizational terms. His legacy is the paradox of the Muslim Brotherhood itself, a movement that can run hospitals and win elections, yet whose founding creed contains the seeds of intolerance, conspiracy, and totalitarian impulse. To understand the ideological roots of groups like Al-Qaeda or the Taliban, one must start not in the mountains of Afghanistan, but in the mind of an Egyptian teacher who decided that to save Islam, he must turn into a revolutionary weapon. He didn't just teach Islam how to organize, he taught a century of extremists how to justify their cause.